This episode of What's Up with Wendy's podcast. Few had access to him. As we all know, Bernie Madoff, the man considered the architect of the biggest Ponzi scheme in U.S. history, died just a few weeks ago behind bars, where he was serving a 150-year sentence, the most one can serve. What drove him to this? No name was synonymous with the evil side of Wall Street than Bernie Madoff. Arrested for fraud in 2008 during the depths of financial crisis, the 70-year-old market maker, investment advisor, and former chairman of the NASDAQ had orchestrated the largest Ponzi scheme in world history, fleecing thousands of investors across the globe to the tune of $65 billion. To this day, questions still remain. Why did he do it? How did he get away with it for so long? What did his family know? Who is Bernie Madoff? For the first time, Madoff have gone on the record to explain why and how he orchestrated the biggest Ponzi scheme in history, with over 400 pages of handwritten letters and emails between him and my special guest today. Madoff shares never before heard details about his business and his family and how he got away with committing fraud for so long. Also, for the first time, Ruth Madoff, Andrew Madoff, and Madoff's attorney, Ira Sorkin, reveal what they knew. You won't want to miss this sit-down. His new book, it's out today, Madoff Talks, uncovering the untold story behind the most notorious Ponzi scheme in history. My friend Jim Campbell, the host of the nationally syndicated radio, Business Talk Radio with Jim Campbell, and his crime show Forensic Talk with Jim Campbell, known for hard-hitting interviews of leading figures from the worlds of business and politics and sports, the all-around great guy, my sit-down with Jim Campbell and his new book, Madoff Talks. My special guest today on this episode of What's Up with Wendy, the host of the nationally syndicated radio show Business Talk with Jim Campbell and his crime show Forensic Talk with Jim Campbell, known for his hard-hitting interviews of leading figures from the worlds of business, politics, and sports. He's just all around a very special person. Jim has been a guest on my radio show, What's Up with Wendy. He is my friend, my colleague, and now I'm so proud of him, first-time author of his explosive and I'm sure to be bestseller, Madoff Talks, uncovering the untold story behind the most notorious Ponzi scheme in history. Jim, I'm so happy to have you here, and I'm so excited and proud of you.
Well, I love you, Wendy, and I have to say that I see your social media and your email signature, which says celebrity host, and I'm trying to figure out, how did I get on this?
You are always a celebrity in my mind.
I'll take it.
Listen, you've been kind to me since the day I stepped into WGCH. I think that was 13 years ago.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah, it could be, because I joined around 2008 or whatever. It's been a long road. And
it's been a long.
You've been there. You've been there forever. I've watched your show grow. And you may not remember this, but when you say I was a guest on your show, actually, how it happened, I had just finished taping a show on the 50th anniversary of the JFK assassination. I was walking out of the studio, and I think Tony Seville came chasing out. Wendy's guest couldn't come on. Can you come join the show? So I got to do a whole nother hour on the Kennedy assassination with you.
One of my favorite topics, by the way, the Kennedys.
Yes. Yep.
Yes, now I remember that. God, that was so long ago, right?
Yes.
Well, thank you for doing that.
Thanks for having me on now.
Well, the timing of this book, considering this man, he orchestrated the biggest Ponzi scheme in the U.S. history just over a week or so ago, died behind bars. He was serving a 150-year sentence. Unbelievable. The karma of the timing, I just don't even know. This remarkable story, it's still hard for me to believe it. You lay it out in this book so perfectly. Sometimes I had to go back and read another page and go back to the other page just to understand this, the magnitude of this. My gosh, how many years in the making was this?
Okay, a good question. I started with Bernie in about 2011, and how did that come out of the blue? It was very fortuitous, literally. I was doing an interview of a woman named Lori Sandell, who'd written a book on the Madoff family from the inside perspective. And she said, if you'd like to talk to Andrew Madoff, the younger son, for prep, you can. It's off the record. So I talked to him off the record. We hit it off. I asked him some really hard questions. And then by coincidence, his mom was moving from Florida, Ruth Madoff, to Old Greenwich. So I
Mhm.
said, well, I said, Andy, I'll take her out to lunch. I had lunch with her. She comes in, sunglasses on, doesn't even take them off inside. We have a great lunch until we walk out, and I say, Ruth, can I get a picture? And she turns to me and she goes, Jim, you're wired, aren't you? So anyway, that went well, and she introduced me to Bernie. And that was about 2011. Andrew died of cancer in 2014. And then we went on. I got 400 pages of stuff with Bernie. Took a time out to go see if I could get a book contract, and then I had to go investigate everything he said to see what was true or not. And that's basically the story. I'm driving out of the radio station after doing the Wednesday morning news show on WGCH um, a week ago, and in my car on the post road on the phone comes across Madoff dies. And I was at a stoplight. It gave me chills because the book was coming out literally a week and a half later. And by the time I got to the Shell convenience station near my house in Old Greenwich, my phone had exploded. Bloomberg wanted me on the radio in 10 minutes, and I was getting stuff from all over the world, literally. And then the New York Post asked me to write 2,000 words that afternoon, and then if I would do it, they would tease it on the front page, which they did. So since then, it's kind of been a whirlwind. Tomorrow, I'm interviewing with Paris Match magazine in France, and
Oh,
that'll be in the April 29th issue in France. It's the number one magazine over there. This morning, I was sent from the Daily Guard. No, it's called the Guardian in London, a big paper there. They had a news article on it. The Daily Beast. It was the number one trending article in the one they sent me, above a story on Trump even. And of course, I'm going to be on the big one after this show airs. People will be able to get the podcast of it. But CBS Sunday morning, this Sunday, the 25th, Wendy show is on Tuesday. CBS is going to have a link to the interview on the CBS website that will then go, they will direct right to my site as well, which is going to be madofftalks.com.
so basically, you are a celebrity.
I know. I'm in. No, only in. No one's going to convince me of that, Wendy. But I got on your show at least. I crossed to get into your thing, so that's good enough for me.
Oh my God! So I don't. So where I want to start with, first of all, there's so much to talk about. The whole thing with your journey started about 12 years ago, right?
Yes.
I want to note that you were the only writer to interview both the feds who investigated Madoff and also his family. Ruth Madoff only confided almost solely in you.
Yes, that's true. Other people spoke to Bernie, and he had stuff. I was the deepest and longest and most intense relationship with him. With Ruth, I was about the only. She did a brief 60 minutes because of that Laurie Sandel book, but she did not enjoy that book. She did it because she was pressured by Andrew, and then of course Andrew spoke to nobody, and he passed away.
You did get a picture with Ruth.
I have a picture with Ruth. Yep.
Yes, you did. Tell. Let's start with her. I was going to start with Andrew, but I think I want to start with her. What was she like?
Okay. And first off, as people know, she lived, and she still does. She lived in Old Greenwich. When I knew her, she was in the Gables, but she's moved now closer to the beach. And an amazing woman. I mean, she had a net worth of $800 million, disappeared. The man she'd been with since age 13 when they started dating was serving 100,
I was
150 years.
shocked, by the way, about that. I did not know that.
Yes, they've been very, yeah. And by the way, when you say how she was cult-like devoted to Bernie. I mean, to the extent that wouldn't have questioned anything that he did if she'd known about it. And she'd had one son die by suicide. Another one was dying slowly from cancer while I was with her. She was living in a house that was owned by Andrew rent-free, driving a used car with dents in it. And any expense over $100 she had to submit to the Madoff liquidation trustee. And so her life was very circumscribed, kind of lonely, and yet she was just someone that went through day to day. She walked at the beach every day. I didn't get a complaint out of her. She was obviously devastated by what Bernie did, but she's a very tough, resilient, and very attractive woman. And I mean that in a nice sense. She was, she was open. She was honest to me. and to the extent that I could verify what she said. And she was walking at the beach at 75, telling me she was jogging part of it. And we had a lot of lunches over the years. And then when the contract, and she was for the book, she helped me put me together with Bernie. And at one point, the warden cut off our relations, saying that I was a security risk, which was a joke. And Ruth kept the communications going between Bernie and I until they restored it. And but when I got the contract from McGraw-Hill, she said she did not want to talk anymore, that she was going to go into total privacy, and Bernie was applying for compassionate early release. So I don't think she wanted any PR around that.
Total privacy. With him since age 13, lost one son to suicide, one son to cancer. My heart, I have to say, like, I could get choked up from this. Like, my heart breaks for her. Do you think she knew?
Chapter 8 in the book, Wendy. Good question. I did a huge investigation into that related to Ruth, Andy, and Mark. And I'm not supposed to tell because we want people to go get the book.
Yes, I know.
But
That's why I did it.
You will get the answer in the book, and I have a lot of respect for both Andrew and her to give you a sense of their character. Now, obviously, it doesn't make them victims worse than real victims if they were to have known nothing. And should they have asked questions, nobody was able to get through to them from the SEC on, but that long. And then there's other stuff, Wendy, that's not pretty. It was a private firm, right? So in a private business, you can kind of do what you want. But she was charging an awful lot of money on the corporate credit card that doesn't look very pretty. It doesn't have anything to do with whether she knew it was an illegal Ponzi scheme. It's just not, the prettiest sight in the world to be, charging that kind of stuff against a business. So, she's a good person, and she was devastated, and she lost her whole family and everything around her. But the whole thing, as you know, is a giant tragedy.
Giant, and I do know that it was on page 8, and I know that, but I didn't know if I was allowed to say it, so I was going to lead you into that.
Nope.
I have to say, total privacy. That's where I'd be running to after all that. I have to say that regardless, and I want people to read the book. And once again, it's Jim Campbell, his new book, Madoff Talks. It's sure to be a #1 bestseller, uncovering the untold story behind the most notorious Ponzi scheme in history. I feel for the woman. I have to say, I just do. Let's and so she should live in total privacy now. And
very nice of you. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, Andrew. Let's talk about Andrew.
All right. Now let me tell you about Andrew first, which is really nice. He had first of all, I thought him to be a very high character individual. He stood up at the front of that, and just a quick overview. He ran a business of market making, which was executing trades for firms like Schwab. He ran that business on the 19th floor of the Lipstick Building in Midtown, 100% at one time honest, highly ethical, and worth $3 billion if he had sold it. On the basement, not the 2 floors down on the 17th is where he ran the Ponzi scheme. Andrew and Mark were essentially out front, upstairs in the legitimate business, like you would be the maitre d' of a restaurant, and everything. The restaurant was a nice, legitimate restaurant, and then you went downstairs, and that's where all the mafia activity was going on. So Andrew thought he was running a really clean business. And when you talk about devastated, when his father informed him of the crime, December 10th, the afternoon before he was arrested the next morning by the FBI, he never spoke a single word to his father again for the rest of his life.
All right, that chokes me up too.
Yeah, and so Andy is dying of cancer. He's had on and off iterations of it, and his girlfriend, Catherine Hooper, who he could not marry, obviously because of the fact that all these legal cases were hanging over him, she kept him going during this period. And when he passed away, she helped me facilitate talking to people in the firm and in the family and people she knew. And she told me over and over, to the depth of her soul, she did not believe that Andrew knew about this crime. But she said, Jim, if you find it, I will accept it, which I thought was a tremendous, how about that for
wow.
character?
Yeah.
And she told me last week, by the way, you know that the amount of money is $65 billion.